Thanks. So I'm Heather Mulligan. I'm the president and CEO of the Business Council of New York State. We are the State Chamber of Commerce and Manufacturing Association. We have about 3,500 members. A while back, actually more than a year ago, probably closer to 2 years ago, we partnered with the Economic Development Council and Ryan Silva, who's going to be a panelist here in a little while. And we decided that it was time for us to collectively get together, go out and talk to the business community about what some of the challenges were. And one of the overarching concerns that we had was what was just previously mentioned, the outmigration, the declining population, the loss of political clout that goes with that. And what we did was more than a year of interviews, surveys, focus groups, and research involving business leaders, owners, associations, probably one of the most thorough reviews of the economic situation in New York done, at least in my memory. We talked to more than 600 business owners. We had multiple in-person meetings. We had Zoom meetings. We did some by sector. And what we came up with was a report, the blueprint, which is available, anyone who wants it. It's available online at ppi.org, which is Public Policy Institute, which is a nonprofit arm of the Business Council. And overall, the findings weren't particularly shocking, but they were definitely sobering. And I don't want everyone here to leave depressed. I would say, caffeine doesn't actually make you happy, but it makes you feel a little happier. There's sugar too, so that's good. But overall, the population in New York is down. We all know this. It's actually over 200,000 net loss since 2020, which is the largest net loss of any state in the country in raw numbers. So larger than California or Texas and Florida, which are growing. Our job growth, anemic. We've had job growth over the last 5 to 10 years, but it's significantly lower than the national average. Half of the growth or a third of the growth that we've seen in Florida, in California, or not California, Texas, and other generally Sunbelt states. Our cost of living is among the highest in affordability. The U.S. News and World Report, they rank New York 45th in affordability. We are 50th in tax friendliness and business friendliness. And we have the largest number of state and local regulations other than California in the country. So there's a lot of challenges. Really what started this conversation, a lot of it was around what we were hearing from businesses, that they were being tempted to move their business. We do surveys, and the Business Council for the last 10 years has done a CEO survey with Siena, there's a question on there that is, if you could start your business over, would you start in New York? And I think the last several years, that number has been in the 30%, which is that 70% of people who have businesses in New York, if they could start over, they would start somewhere else. We've created an environment that is very, very challenging for people to start businesses. New York City, I was at yesterday Albany breakfast. Julie Menon, the new speaker of the city council, was there, and she noted with alarm that New York City lost 3,000 businesses in last year, maybe 2 years. But that's not sustainable. Empty storefronts create sort of a spiraling effect. You see higher crime, you see other people not wanting to invest. And certainly if you live somewhere, you don't have that coffee shop or record store, or you can tell how old I am. I'm like, record store? I would like a record store. I would actually love a cat cafe, but anyways. So all of this to say, there are some challenges and problems in New York, and what we wanted to do was get specific ideas from businesses as to things that we could address to fix them. I'm going to come back to regulation, but I do want to mention taxes. Everyone says, oh, you're going to say taxes are too high. And there's a relatively serious discussion right now going on about raising taxes, raising the corporate tax, raising the high income earner tax. So I think to level set that, we really need to talk about where we are right now on taxes. And we are number one. Yay, we're number one in state and local tax burden. Per capita, $12,000 per person. That's not including federal taxes. When you include federal taxes, it's more like $20,000 per person. It's not spread evenly, but if you want to just use this kind of math and compare ourselves to other states, it's higher than California. It's double Florida. It's double Texas, notably states that are growing. The national average per capita is 7,000. Florida is 5. And so it's a huge pound of flesh just for the privilege of living in New York. We also already have the highest corporate taxes in the nation, because if you are, right now, there's an extension of the surcharge, which I always joke, surcharges in New York just mean increase, because surcharges almost never go away. So we're already at the top end of what we take from people who live here. Our spending is $16,000 per capita. How could that be more than what we take? Well, it's because there's federal money added into that as well. But that's 92% more than the state of Florida. So we're spending 92% more. Do we think the services that we're getting in New York are 92% better than Florida's? I will tell you they outperform us on health outcomes, on education outcomes, quality of life, and they're more affordable. So I think, the argument, it kind of speaks for itself. But if you want to think about the Northeast, we're 32% more than New Jersey. So I don't know, are we 32% better than New Jersey? Maybe you can make a case there, although I'm not a New Jersey hater, but they have the whole Jersey Shore is pretty nice. But if we just spent what New Jersey spends per capita, we would shave $32 billion off of the budget. They're a smaller state, so this is per capita, but $32 billion less we would, if we just spent as much as New Jersey did. So I guess the real question is, what do we get for our tax dollars, right? Where are we compared to other states? Well, arguably no one really knows, because we don't actually measure these outcomes. There's not a whole lot of transparency about the $5 billion that we spent recently in the last 2 years, additional spending on childcare. What has that translated into? Are there more childcare spots available? I think the feel is that it's not the case, but we don't know, because there's no reporting on this, there's no measurement, there's no look back. When we increase spending on the largest categories, are we also increasing the positive outcomes that are supposed to be attendant to that spending? So that's something that we felt very strongly about, and that's part of our regulatory agenda. But the bottom line is there's a heavy, heavy burden on New Yorkers. There's not a feeling, there's not a narrative that says, but the quality of life in New York is so much better than these other states that it's worth it. I am not advocating for cutting spending, cutting programs. I am advocating for accountability. Let's look at where the money is going, and let's connect the outcomes to the spending. I think, if it was in your real life and you were paying $50 for a personal trainer a month to go to a gym and you were getting nothing out of it, your solution wouldn't be stay with the same personal trainer and spend $100. There's no analysis of why is this not working. So we need to start doing that, and we need to focus on restoring the state's economic climate to one of growth. The private sector drives the economy, the private sector creates jobs and opportunities, and people will move where the jobs are. So we've seen outmigration. We lost more than 250,000 people just to the state of Florida in a 3-year period, 20 to 23. In that same time frame, Florida earned or gained more than $62 billion in gross income from people across the country. More than $9 billion of income relocated from New York to Florida in just 2021. And the redistricting network, which was mentioned earlier last week, predicted that New York will lose 2 congressional seats after the 2030 census. We are currently at 26 members, House members. In 1953, we had 45. We had almost double the amount of clout federally that we have now. So this is not sustainable. We need to reverse course. We need to take the appropriate steps to make New York more business friendly, more affordable, and create a more sustainable economy. So I think that is why we got the feedback that we did. The recommendations that come out of the report, the first round, and there's lots of recommendations, obviously looking at results is a very big part of it. First and foremost, let's take a look at our regulatory climate. That's one of the big challenges that people have in doing business in New York. I've said this at a bunch of different events, and I'll say it again. The story that resonated with me in terms of trying to do business in New York, there's a couple, but one is if you are trying to get economic development funds from the state of New York, the application might be like 40 or so. And is it still? Yeah. And it's filled with questions like, can you guarantee that you will have this outcome, that you will create this many jobs? And if you don't, by the way, we're gonna take it back. So it's already sort of setting you up for, here are the rules, here are the landmines, and here are all the details that need to provide us. Other states, what we do in 40 pages, they do in 1 page. You can do it online. And when you submit that application, you can actually know when someone's gonna look at it, how long it's gonna take, and you'll have a sense pretty quickly if what you're gonna get, and it will be sort of for investment, right? If you do this, we'll give you this. That's not the case in New York. New York, it's 40 pages, we don't know when we'll get back to you, and you might be eligible for up to X, Y, and Z kinds of incentives. So just on the incentive side, we have created a requirements around our regulatory structure that make life very difficult. And the other example that I like to give was a gentleman on Long Island who was building affordable housing, $100 million affordable housing project, submitted an application for a local approval, and it went into a black hole. And he's like, it's been there for a couple months. I don't know if they never even told me that they got it, but there's no one I can call. And there's no way to track this online. He's like, last night I ordered a pizza at Papa John's and they told me when it was coming to my house, how much it would cost, and I could see the little driver on my screen and knew when to open my front doors. Like, how is it that a $100 million affordable housing project is this high degree of uncertainty? I don't know if I'm ever gonna qualify for the funds, and I don't know when I'm gonna hear anything from anyone. So these are the kinds of things that it may seem flip to talk about it in this sense, but we can do better than this. New York is, at a time, was the most innovative state in the country. We are a technology state. We are a financial services state. The largest portion of our GDP comes from financial services, and the technology industry is extremely important contributor. We need to leverage all of the assets that we have and fix things. So we recommended regulatory reform using AI, and I'm very happy to say Assemblyman Boris introduced some legislation that will help us get part of the way there. The governor has immediately, was very responsive, and I feel very positively about this, that she was gonna take a look and has asked her agencies to look at burdensome, duplicative, outdated regulation. Do we really need to have a chair in every elevator? And by the way, when's the last time you were on an elevator and there was a chair in there? It is the law. But it goes back to when there were elevator operators. But it's still on the books, so let's get rid of some of the unnecessary regulation. Let's actually try and figure out what something is gonna cost before we implement it. Let's figure out what is the cost, not just to the state in terms of a fiscal note, which, by the way, those aren't even particularly real anymore. But let's also figure out what is the cost of business, what is the cost of compliance, and make sure that what we are adding in terms of cost, that we get a result from it that is in line with what our objective is. Let's actually fix SECR, which the State Environmental Quality Review Act sounds kind of boring, but The governor put a proposal in the budget that will speed up the process and stop the review process from being used as just a roadblock to building, because it has impacted the ability to build anything in New York, but affordable housing is included in that anything. We'd like this proposal that the governor has to apply to all projects, but housing is a good start. So we've got reasons for optimism. We do have a legislature that is responsive. Last year, the $7 billion in federal debt that we owed to the federal government, trailing us from the close downs in 2020, was paid off by the state and the state as part of the budget. And we owe a huge thank you to both the governor and to Speaker Hasty for making sure that that was included, because that was a huge drag on the economy. But I think there's reason for optimism, but we need to ask for it. We need to tell our legislators, we need to tell the policymakers of the ways that we can improve the business climate, and let's put ourselves into first place in business friendliness and economic outlook instead of last place. And I think it's doable. I think it's really important that we recognize that while these sound like big insurmountable hurdles, they're not. If you actually look at what you're spending on, you can figure out where the spending doesn't make sense. If you actually remove some of the disincentives to investment, people want to invest in New York. This is a vibrant state. I grew up here, I grew up in upstate, I love it. I don't ever want to leave, I don't plan on leaving. So if you want me to leave, sorry. But anyways, so I think there's reason for hope and optimism. I was at the Albany breakfast yesterday, and the new speaker of the city council was speaking about the need for us to use data and use metrics to evaluate how the existing spending is actually achieving the results it's supposed to achieve before we just resort to trying to find new additional revenue. Before we pile on new regulations, let's know what that impact will be on our climate. And all of those things will put us in a better place. So with that, I say thank you. Thank you for your attention and for being here.